into detail about what we actually want to think about putting into a design document, then our design review guidelines has a whole raft of questions that might be asked by all of the other teams, and you can run through that just as a checklist and decide which of those are relevant to whatever you're currently doing. So where do you actually put your design documentation? Well, for small stories, you put them in Rally. That's sufficient. For larger stories, they should go on the wiki. And why do we do this? Is so that we have something to review, and then we can catch any issues early. So that's the design stage. What about coding? So good developers write good code. Great ones also write good comments. It's easier actually to say what bad comments are. So we all know bad comments, we can spot them a mile away. So useless comments are things like return the result, clearly rubbish. Create self-documenting code instead. So this example here, the comment is clearly useless if it could be rewritten like this. Worrying comments, so comments where there's no explanation and just open up other questions. This is actually one I found in the Windows device driver, which was even more scary. You don't want to know what these no-ops are for. This is assembly instructions, no-op is no operation. And it actually caused a few microseconds delay in the code. Scary. So var is not self-commenting. We have rules about using var, but that's just an example. And there's also infuriating comments. Infuriating comments are things like somebody writing, I know I should probably refactor this, but I don't have time. And this one, again, was one I found in some Microsoft code. It was next you walked the CPU into 100% organic real mode. I found that while I was desperately trying to fix a bug on a customer's site and desperately trying to understand this code. It didn't help me at all. So good code documentation, I think, boils down to two basic things. Code should be self-documenting. So all your variable names and method names, everything's a structure. If it's well architected, then it will be self-documenting. But there are occasions where you have to explain a little bit more. And if the code is complex and not obvious, it's not immediately obvious what that code does, then document it. So from the QA perspective, we have to communicate as developers to the QA teams, or the QA engineers, what it is our code does and how they're supposed to test it. And if we can communicate that better in design documents, then they'll have a better chance of being able to test it. But the QA team should also write up their tests, the tests that they're proposing to do, either in Rally tasks or on the wiki if it's a particular area that they'll need to retest manually. And that'll help us spot design issues early if we actually do that at the design stage. We don't have to wait until the code's delivered before writing out test specs. So if we've got general information about how to test particular areas of the code, like how to test social payments, for example, then there should be a wiki page associated with that to help anybody that needs to do that again in the future. And also document the test results in the Rally story. And this tells people that you've actually undertaken those tests. And basically there's a saying that you can't show that you did something until you've documented it. So the takeaways from this: use common sense, discuss it with your team if necessary, where you need to write documentation. Make sure products give you adequate descriptions and justifications. If they don't, and they don't answer those three questions of usable, valuable, and feasible, then throw it back at them and say, well, we need to have more detail here. Write up your proposed solutions in design documents, either on Rally or on the wiki, and review it with your team and other teams as well. It's not just your team. Any team that's affected by whatever you're proposing to do should be consulted. Be smart with comments in code, and QA should write the test specs and the requirements as early as possible and record their results. And then just generally update the wiki with anything about how the system works that might be useful to other people. And that's it. Any questions?
Yeah.
No, over to you, Adam.
Mark, hey, I have one question, Mark, this isn't here.
Hi.
Could you mention something about design review documentation?
Yeah, so there's a link here on these slides. I'll put where these slides are. There's a link here which is to the design design review. And the design review guidelines actually list, I don't know if you can see this, probably a bit small for you. But the design review guidelines actually go through a number of areas, why we actually do a design review, when you should actually do a design review, and it's got a whole checklist of things to consider. So from an area like the database, what technology you're using, any configuration parameters, internationalization and security and API requirements, compatibility, reusability and so on, testing, compliance, deployment, there's a whole list of stuff in deployment. And these are all, I didn't create these out of the top of my head, these were all actually came from different teams and what other teams would actually need to know in order to sort of properly deploy something or properly QA something. So we actually started writing a template also for software design documents on the wiki. That's currently under review. I've got a couple of people that are doing it. Roland, for example, is doing one for PayPal. So after a few people have tried it out and that template has been modified to suit their requirements too, then I'll post that for general review, so you can use that as a template for anything. But this, basically, whenever you're doing anything, even now, you should look through the design review guidelines, that's what they're for. And it will just give you an idea of things you may have forgotten to consider as part of your design process. Does that just answer your question? Yeah?
Thanks, Mark.
Не. Там чек-лист.
Yes.
Есть по чек-листу. Я смотрел чек-лист.
Any other questions for Mark?
Any questions?
So everybody promises to do good documentation from here forward?
Sure. Yes.
All right. Good. Thank you very much, Mark.
Он такие слайды похожи. The meaning of the life is what? Yeah, wasn't it?
Okay, so that was, whoops. Just a reminder, the hackathon's coming, so that's gonna be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to that. We always get such great results from that. And that's it. Anybody have anything else they want to share?
No.
Going once, going? Oh, go ahead.
No, we said no. It was a no.
Oh, so no, okay. All right, everybody, have a nice evening. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.